Hello. I could talk today. That's good. Hello, welcome to the Break Up With Your Bullshit podcast. My name is Michelle Akin. And today I have a very exciting guest. This is the first time we have ever spoken, except for the fact that we have collaborated on a creative project, but have never actually been face to face talking. And her name is Kelly Wilde Miller. Hi.
Hi, Michelle. My my book cover co-creator that I'm speaking to for the very first time.
Yes. The power of the internet is that we'll tell that in a little bit because I like to ask people two things. Actually, no, we could start with that. So could you tell the story of how we came to be in contact?
Yeah. So about a month ago, I was challenged by a couple of friends to write and publish a book in 5 days. And I said yes to the challenge. And then on day one, I began actually, instead of writing first, I began designing the cover first because I was working with a designer over in the Ukraine. And I just knew that I needed to get that going because a 5 day turnaround for a book cover, let alone writing the book, is a big ask. So I was working with a designer, and I also realized very quickly that I didn't have enough bandwidth to be making big design decisions while I was simultaneously trying to write my book. So I started crowdsourcing feedback on X or Twitter. And I just posted a bunch of different ideas of what the book cover could be, refined it down to the winner, but then got into this iterative process of what needs to change in this one design. And you so wonderfully sketched out an actual cover in your journal. We should just raise that up right
Yeah,
now.
I'm just gonna show
Yeah.
it for anyone watching this.
Yes. And before this, it said creative dysregulation, dysregulation, dysregulate. It just said dysregulation a bunch of times. And then you added these awesome words and crossed them out. And it was just this clear, like, 100% this is what we're going with. I don't know who this Michelle lady is, but her idea is amazing. Screenshot it over to my designer. Next thing we know, that's the winning design that we're going with. And then for the rest of the design process, I just kept tagging you, being like, Michelle clearly knows what she's doing. I hope she's has nothing else going on for the next few days because I'm gonna need her within like minutes of tweeting.
Well, I was very attuned to it too, because I'm addicted. I'm actually on a break right now, which I think you saw
I
yesterday.
saw, yeah.
But I'm so addicted to the notifications and I also just happened to be sitting at my computer when you tagged me a few times. Or one time I was in my car and I had an idea, so I literally ran to the office to draw it because I'm
For
each
my book.
time, yeah. The second time, there's another one in here somewhere where you were asking about the back cover layout, and I did one,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then someone else had a better idea than mine, which I was so happy for because I wasn't like thrilled with this. You
Yeah.
really got to look up this one on the video, y'all. But it's just me sketching different ideas for book covers in my. It was a brand new notebook too, isn't it pretty on the
Oh,
outside?
so fun.
Mm.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, what's the interesting part of this for me is that, well, I'm not a designer and I have just been conditioned over the years by my husband, who is a web developer and has a great design eye, including like for fashion, even just I'll put on an outfit and he could tell me what's wrong with it or what it needs or like different color shoes or something. He's just got a really great eye. And so anytime that I've designed anything, he's come in and been like, that needs to be sans serif. That needs more letting over here. He just knows exactly what's wrong with anything that he looks at immediately and then tells me. So he's the go-to person. If my friend gets headshots done, if someone does a logo, I'm like, let me ask Justin. I show it to him and he's like, he'll either be like, great, or he'll be like, here's everything they need to change. And because I've been around that for so long, I've developed my own sense of it that at this point, usually when I design something and send it to him, his first response is great. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm doing it. I'm figuring it out. So when you posted the four covers, and I saw a lot of people saying the first one's good. And to me, as your target audience, I was like, I wouldn't pick that up. I
Mm.
understand that they're saying the design's good. Like the design didn't need anything else. It was a head. It was a person's brain. It was showing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can think of a handful of other books that have a head on the cover right now. I would not, as a creative person, be like, ooh, what's that?
Yeah.
And it was a pretty design, and I know people who were looking at it know what a tight turnaround you were on. So they were just trying to be like, that's good, go with it. But
Mhm.
so we haven't explicitly said it. The book is called Creative Dysregulation. And anyone who listens to this podcast is going to be like, tell me more.
Mhm.
Just upon hearing that title, just like, yeah,
Mhm.
we're all having this experience, whatever that means. And I'd love to get into that with you. But when I saw the cover that said creative and then the word dysregulation like 7 times, but they're all crossed off, immediately I thought, well, I think you're getting to the word dysregulation, not like you would need to be crossing out other ideas of what that could mean. What does it mean to me? It means inconsistency, laziness, disorganization, impulsiveness, mania, procrastination, obsession. I think you added one other one in there too.
Yeah, I'm actually going to pull it up on my computer because I did swap out some of the words, but I
Yeah,
love hearing this backstory from you of that thought process because we didn't actually get into it of how did the idea to add in these other words and cross them out. And so knowing that you were like, no, no, we're working our way to
right.
dysregulation. Here's all the other things that
Right.
we're
Here's what you're
crossing out.
mistakenly calling it. And
Yes.
or here's what you're saying, but actually let's have a new distinction called creative dysregulation, that this book is going to present you with a new idea. And for
Yes.
anyone who's been stuck in their cycle of, I don't know, just torture around art and creativity, is usually someone yearning for a new idea, just something. What else could I, how else could I frame this? How else could I look at it that would actually have it feel different or have it go differently for me?
Yeah. Well, again, so grateful that you were there to just jump in and that it resonated so much. And I have to say that as I was writing the book, I mean, there was no time for strategy. I was writing the book in 5 days. This was really just like intuitive impulsiveness in a way of like, I don't know, I'm just going to put it on Twitter and see what happens. And to see that it did have such a reaction from people, both the concept of the book and the phrase itself, but then also the 5-day book challenge.
Mhm.
Like there was just kind of this frenzy of like, let's cheerlead Kelly, and this is so exciting. And that was, I mean, the best non-strategy strategy to actually
Yeah.
having like a pretty successful little micro launch there at the beginning. And it made myself as the writer so much more confident as I was doing it because I was getting this constant, I wouldn't call it validation, yes, but also just this feedback loop of like, what does this mean to other people? And then people were writing me in the DMs being like, wow, this really resonates. I want to tell you my story. And then I asked for people's stories and I was getting these long multi-paragraph emails from strangers, which then I like literally just like copied and pasted into the book. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting that in there and it's going to stay anonymous, but like this is so rich.
Yeah.
And so I've realized I was like, I feel like we're writing this together in some ways, like this weird co-creative project with strangers across the internet who are
Yes.
bonding over this very meta creative experience.
I love it. And I love that you say it's like not actually a strategy, because the second that someone tries to replicate this, it's not going to work,
Uh-huh.
right? If you go into it with this end goal in mind, everyone's going to support me and this is what's going to happen. No, it's magic. You can't, as soon as you try to
Mm,
plan it, you've lost.
it's true.
You just showed up and were like responding to the call in the moment, going with the flow, saying yes, yes, yes to everything that came your way. As far as I mean, first of all, Kelly wrote a book in 5 days. Okay. That was the moment of inception, the or conception, I don't know. That was the inciting incident. That was the moment that set everything in motion toward all of this magic getting created because you just said yes.
Yeah. And it, again, like very meta experience, writing a book about creative dysregulation and then viewing my own dysregulated tendencies within the creative process, but then also simultaneously healing certain dysregulating tendencies, which for me, I'm a hyper strategizer. I
Mhm.
love thinking about the plan and how the 10 steps beyond now and what it's all going to mean and getting really structured. And then it kills the creative zest and aliveness. And then whatever I make is really dry and just not very exciting. So it was like there just is no luxury for overthinking, for planning. There's no luxury to procrastinate. it clearly called out my competitiveness, which I haven't experienced in many years.
Ha,
I'm like, oh, well, maybe actually that's an ingredient for me to just like rise up and just get the thing done.
yeah.
Is this like deadline and all this now social accountability of hundreds of people across the internet? And, of course, if something had happened and and it was hard, I will say, like by day 4, I was not feeling good about the
Mhm.
progress of the book. And I was like whining to my husband, like, I can't believe I said yes to this. And who would ever hold me account? This is mean. This is just rude. I'm self-harming. Like, I'm really stressed out right now. I was also premenstrual the whole
Oh God.
time. So like probably
Wait,
the
wait. Kelly deserves a fucking award. That is wild. That is wild that you didn't even do it like during ovulation or
no,
something when your
no,
creative juices are the highest and it's the
right,
easiest to
right.
regulate.
No, I did it when like agitation was at its peak highest. And then, and then I just like met those parts of me that were afraid of putting something out in the world that was incomplete. And I just kept softening on just like, okay, this is a healing process. This 5-day
Mm,
challenge, I'm healing my own creative dysregulation within it. And yeah, it wasn't perfect. Like I wasn't fully grounded and I was a little stressed and I ate a lot of chocolate that week. And but there was this witness, I was taking on this witness perspective of like witnessing myself in the unfolding and the creative act, and also recognizing that my dysregulation in the past has been launching and then like hiding and not actually standing by my creations.
mm,
And I felt myself coming into like a deep relationship with this book and this creation of like, I am here with it. And it's bigger. It got bigger than myself by day 1. Even just co-creating with you, I was like, wow, this doesn't feel like my thing anymore.
yeah.
It is my thing, but there's other people who are influencing it. And that felt really good. It actually felt easier to finish it knowing that it wasn't just me in my basement making something over here. And then I'll reveal it to the world and be like, hey guys, I did a thing. Because if I had done that, if I got the challenge to write the book and then for 5 days said nothing, but then that following Saturday was like, hey guys, I published a book, I bet people would have been like, cool.
Yeah, so did everyone else. I don't know. Like a lot of people write books.
Yeah.
Uh yeah, I love that because you created a hype machine and you created collaborators and essentially it's the concept of a village rather than just a one person having a baby. 'Cause it's a book baby.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so I did something similar once. I sold an ebook before I wrote it. And this was like right when I became a coach. And I charged $15 pre-order. And I had like a big YouTube audience and a big Tumblr audience back then. So I got 110 sales overnight. And I said, oh, the first 100 people get a coaching session with me. And I was just about to start coach training. So I ended up with over 100 people interested in being my client, in addition
That's
to
amazing.
making, right? But I sold it and then I wrote it. And so it was similar, which is also, by the way, why I jumped in immediately and
Mm,
pre-ordered yours, because I was like, oh, you're doing the thing like I did. That needs support. Yes. And I happened to be online the second you posted it. It was like I saw the post and it had been seconds since you posted or something like that. So whenever
yeah.
something like that happens, I consider it divine intervention and I jump
Mm,
instant. Um, and the reason I'm telling you this, not just to relate, because I think I already told you on Twitter, I did that once, but I did it the one time, wildly successful. The next year I tried to recreate it. No,
mm,
just like the I still sold a bunch, but if I compared sales and just the overall experience, nothing
mm,
like it, right? The
mm,
first time it was all this novelty. I'm becoming a coach. Here's this thing I'm launching to help pay for my coach training. Everyone was so ready to support.
mm,
And it was not that there weren't lots of people around to support for the second, but the second was a lot harder.
mm,
I think I got to chapter 5 and then threw it away and started over, stuff like that.
mhm,
And then I tried it again a few years later and I wrote a third. So I've written 3 ebooks, but the first one was like, that was the one. And then trying to recreate the same experience again usually doesn't happen. Just doesn't go
Yeah.
the same way.
Yeah. I'm really curious of like that those initial wins, you know, people supporting you. Like I found in this experience that a lot of people bought the book. You know, mine was $5, so it's a pretty approachable price point. And I was like, oh, I think a lot of these people are buying because they just want to like champion me as Kelly, the creative. And
Hmm.
I, you know, I recognized a bunch of the names that came through as Twitter people. And I was like, so cool. We're just like creative people supporting creative people and saying, like, yes, keep going through these purchases. And then also there's people who were writing in being like, I really need the content of your book. And
Yeah.
they like didn't, they're not, I mean, yeah, on some level they're supporting me as the author, but they're actually more supporting themselves because of what the book is
Right.
giving. And there's almost like two camps of supporters. And so I'm curious in your experience if you kind of found that too, of the people who like genuinely just wanted the material that you were writing about versus those who are just like, yay, Michelle did a thing and I really want to support her. And there's, of course, like the people who are in the middle as well.
Totally. I mean, I was in a unique position of having been on YouTube for 6 or 7 years. And so most of the people who were buying it were people who had followed me, not just in my comedy YouTube, but I had started a channel that was more personal development and comedy. It's called Fart with Headphones On. So geared at 13-year-old girls. So that was my clientele, or not who I coached because I only coach 18 and up, but a lot of the people who had been following me for years started off like 13. Um, One of them just messaged, or somebody who followed me when they were 9 messaged me recently and were like, I was one of the OG iPad kids. I used to watch you on YouTube. Now I'm 22. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's how long it's
Oh,
been.
wow, they're like growing up with you.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So in my case, a lot of the purchases were people who wanted the content because they had been watching me. I was advice blogging on Tumblr. I was making videos, answering people's questions. And so I'd already positioned myself like that in the space.
Hmm.
And then there's maybe a little handful that were like my aunt, but mostly it was mostly people who were interested in it. I think if it was now, these days, I do have a handful of friends who will just get the thing to support me. But then also like low key want the content or support, and there's like more overlap probably than I even realized.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some of my closest friends bought it and read it. And so I'm like, you wouldn't have read it if you were just wanting to support me,
Right.
you know? And so I think
It's always
there's a big
nice.
crossover there. But most of my friends that I surround myself with these days are also creatives on some level. So I think my
Hmm.
topic really resonates with them.
Yeah, and I do think the method of, so I was kind of alluding to, you can, or just flat out saying you can't recreate this experience exactly, but if anyone's listening and you're inspired, I think you can try it. I think you could do it. I was talking like for us, once we've done it once,
Yeah.
it's like that shtick ain't gonna work
No,
again,
you
probably.
gotta keep evolving and iterating and
But you do need
yeah.
to draw inspiration from, and mine came from, do you know who Danielle Laporte is?
Uh-huh.
Well, I did some video work with her, so I know her.
Hmm.
But back, so I was talking to her about, um, the book, and she had done this thing, where she launched not just a book, it was called the Fire Starter Sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah, she launched that before she created it. Like she
Mhm.
sold it before it was made. And when I heard her say that, I just went, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to sell something before it's made. That sounds so badass. I
Mhm.
love it. So I took just the idea, and then I was like, I'm going to do it with this ebook, and then I'll launch it. And oh, I think I shared with you that after I sent it out to the pre-order people, I came down with a high fever.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Wild.
That could be another book is like
Right?
the creative vulnerability hangover and the weird things that happen.
I love it.
There's
I
something
want
I
to,
wanted. Oh,
oh, go, no, you go.
cool. Yeah, there's something I wanted to share of yeah, there's real magic when you're making a thing and you're talking about it and then someone goes, "Where can I pre-buy?" Or
Yeah.
where's the purchase link? And someone did that to me. I was like, you and I and all these other people were brainstorming on the cover, and then someone randomly, I don't actually even know who, was like, "Where's the pre-buy link?" Next thing I know, my husband and I are scrambling, and I'm like back in Stripe, and I'm like creating a Stripe link, and I was like, "Oh my God, someone wants to buy it," figuring out the price. I'm like, $5. And then put that up, and like, 4 sales roll in like the first 10 minutes. And sure, $20, not life-changing money, but like life-changing validation that just
Mhm.
says like, go, yes, we're in this for you. And not that money is the only validating force, but it's really helpful when you
Yeah.
know that you're making something that you do want to sell, because that's the greatest vote of faith or trust that someone can really give you.
Yes.
And even like my husband's course that he's running, he's in his 5th cohort right now. All he did was tweet an idea for the curriculum, like a screenshot of a Notion page with a brainstormed curriculum. And someone said, where can I pre-buy? Next thing
Wow.
you know, he like puts a $50 deposit Stripe link together, sends it to that person, and he turns to me and he goes, I think this is happening now. It's like that
Yes.
first person saying, I'm in, and here's my money. Like, it's just huge what that can do. And so the other day, I received an email from a gentleman who read my book. And in the book, I challenge people to email me and like introduce themselves and share, what challenge they're going to do, because I offer some experiments in the back of the book. And he was sharing his story, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm writing my own book, and it's available on pre-sale." And he links to it, and he's pre-selling it for $2.99. And I was just
Come
like,
on.
"Of course, buy."
Yeah.
Like, what? Yes. And he was so stoked that I pre-bought it. I'm like, am I going to read it? I don't know, but I was it was just this instant like, of course. And it reminds me of this woman who she was in the faculty of my college, and her name was Shannon. And I used to do a lot of business plan pitching in college. We had like a series of collegiate business plan pitch competitions, and I was always in those. And I remember every single time I'd be pitching or presenting, everyone in the audience would be deadpan, just staring at you with these like blank faces. And Shannon would be there smiling, nodding her
Oh,
head, so engaged, no matter what. And I
yes.
remember anytime I was nervous, I would just find Shannon in the audience and be like, oh, here's a woman who is like so approving what I'm saying. She's in it with me. That I just called it the Shannon effect. And like
Yes.
every time I see someone trying to create something, I'm like, what would Shannon do? Like, how can I just champion this
Yeah.
person? Love this, like, yes, get it. I don't care about the quality. I don't care if you're the world's greatest writer or whatever. Like, you're doing a thing, and that is what matters.
Yeah. Everybody needs a Shannon all the time.
I
I
felt
love
that in
that.
you. I was like, Michelle's
Oh,
being a
thanks.
Shannon for me right now.
I Shannon people often. Let's just make it a verb. I Shannon people a lot. But only when only when I moved,
Yeah.
and it's there's something divine happening, and it feels like an invitation. But I've done that for people so much over the years. And then some people have really gone on to do absolutely wild, incredible things. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no, no, no. It's worth my time. It's always
Mm-hmm.
worth my time. It feels great. It's like
Mm.
we are all co-creating things together. There's a lot of hive mind, especially in our like Twitter circles. You reminded me that once back when back when iTunes selling songs for 99 cents and people buy or $1.29 was kind of the thing.
Yeah.
One of my YouTube subscribers on my music channel emailed me and said, "Hey Michelle, I ripped or like figured out a way to get MP3s of these 5 songs of yours. So here is money for that, as if it's iTunes, because I'm listening to them and I feel I should pay you for that." And so he sent me like $5 for the 5 songs or whatever amount. It was like the exact iTunes amount. He had like calculated it and then sent me the money. And same as your point, it's not a life altering amount of money, but it was like this, oh, someone values my music enough to pay for it. I mean, that's just unheard of.
Mm.
What? So I had forgotten about that. It's all
What
right
did
now.
what did that do for you as a musician?
Well, I was doing covers, so I wasn't even like writing original music. I was just putting up covers and making music videos, but it definitely, I remember it was very calming to receive. It was this
Mm.
sort of, oh, uh, it was steadying. It felt like he poured cement into my foundation that I was trying to create and just made it feel sturdier to stand on.
Mm.
And a lot of people have done stuff like that for me over the years that have helped me know which direction to go more toward. Because lots of people can say stuff, people can say nice stuff all day, but when someone takes an action like that,
Mhm.
goes out of their way, it's like, oh, there's more than just me at work here.
Mhm.
Something's happening. I need to listen. And I do think the best creative work, it feels like something's happening through you, and not to push it off, but sometimes someone will read, I write fan fiction, and someone will read a story and be like, I love this one. And I'm like, me too. Just it it felt channeled through me every single bit, or I'd be in the middle of posting and just I'm writing the story as it goes and posting new chapters when I have them. And someone's like, I can't wait to find out what happens next. And I reply,
Oh.
neither can I, because I don't know what's gonna happen next. I'm an improv writer. I don't plan out the story. So I'm also getting surprised while I'm writing it. Sometimes I'm in the middle of writing and I go, oh, really? Okay. Like I don't have any any say in what happens next. The characters are telling me what is happening.
Yeah, I love that. I'm also just really inspired by how many creative outlets you have.
Oh God, there's more.
I think if you have like at least 3, then you probably have like 30. Because
Exactly.
then
And I
you're
could
just
have
in
more.
the stream of creation, which is just everything.
I love any medium. I'm really into Legos at the moment. Not in a anything beyond following directions kind of way, but that's how you start, right?
Yeah.
I have this my daughter doesn't know about this. I had to buy a Lego set just for my office that she doesn't know about because otherwise she does the whole build, but it's Fox the Phoenix
Oh
from
my
Harry
gosh.
Potter.
Did you
And
build that?
yeah,
What?
and it flies.
That's amazing.
Like Lego's amazing. I'm putting together a giant roller coaster right now. This is the biggest Lego set I've ever done. It was $400 Lego set that is a business expense because my whole thing is taking people on roller coasters and coaching at theme parks.
You take them to theme parks?
Yes.
Whoa. I used to work at Disney World.
What? Okay. Wait, what did you do at Disney?
Oh my God, it's a whole story. Um, the short answer is I didn't get to pick my job. So I just want to preface with that. But I worked at Disney Quest, which is no longer in business. And it
Uh-huh.
was at downtown Disney, outside of the Disney World parks. It's like the shopping and eating district. And Disney Quest was this 5-story arcade with 8 virtual reality rides and like 300 video games. And it was a giant building with no windows. And parents would just drop their kids off for hours while they went and like ate and shopped and drank. And then their kids could just play video games. And it was an experience for sure.
Wow.
I wanted to be I grew up dancing. I've danced since I was 3. So I was classically trained dancer from 3 to 19. So I actually wanted to be in like the parades and the
Mhm.
performance. But to tie it kind of back into creative dysregulation, I sort of self-sabotaged making the auditions on time and then didn't get that opportunity.
Mm,
So then I was like randomly placed elsewhere alongside 7,000 other students who were coming
right.
to staff the park. So there really wasn't like a lot of opportunity to switch
Yeah.
jobs. So that was one of my early initiations into what happens when you don't stand up for your own creative desires.
Mm,
Yeah.
yes. That's so weird because I just remembered that I had an opportunity to audition for Disney to first with singing
Mhm.
and I don't know if it was like face character and performer auditions, and I got sick.
Mm.
I lost my voice, like completely lost my voice instantly.
Whoa. I have chills right now. How old are you?
I was in college.
Okay. Yeah. So it would have been probably the same program, the college internship
Oh
program
my
that they
gosh.
have.
I can't even remember how or why I knew about it. I interned at NBC, so maybe I knew someone through that. I don't know what connection it even was. It's sort of a weird buried memory that just came up when you said the thing about sabotage. I'm like, oh yeah, I've done that. I've done it
Yeah,
for Broadway too. I've done it for Broadway auditions and like didn't
really. That's
didn't study
it's one of my
or
alternate life dreams is to
same,
be a Broadway star. I
same.
just can't because I go to bed at 9 p.m.
Right?
Like
It's a
I
whole
get
other life. It's
it's a
just
whole nother thing. I'd need a different body, like with a different energy system to be able to actually sustain that.
I dance too, by the way.
Uh,
So we're like we have a crossover.
were you actually auditioning for a particular Broadway show and then it like just
Hmm.
didn't work out?
Yeah, I think were any of them fully on Broadway? I got sent on a lot of auditions in a very short amount of time for the very brief stint that I had an agent and was actually pursuing this, maybe 6 months before I was
Got it.
like, no, I don't want to do this. Because if you're a comedian in New York City, at least back then, you get and you have an agent, you get pulled for a lot of stuff because they want improvisers and they want comedians. They want people who are quick and who can maybe write better lines for commercials, like commercial
Uh-huh.
auditions. They'll bring you in and like improvise, write it
Mhm.
for us, you know? And yes, I'm totally throwing shade at the commercial industry. Just like
I'm sure that's fine for most listeners.
some of the worst experiences of my life were commercial auditions.
No,
Oof,
I bet.
oof. But it made it really clear that I didn't want to do it because meanwhile, my friend Grace was doing it and suffering in the same way, but kept going because it's what
Mm.
she wanted to do. And it was never what I wanted to do. I got offered the agent because of her, because we did comedy together. And then her agent or manager were like, oh, also your comedy partner, let's bring her in, and had seen me already. So just immediately start sending me out on auditions and trying to fit me into some kind of box that I don't fit in.
Well, if you're interested, my friends and I, we've been joking about making Internal Family Systems the musical, and it would only happen during daylight hours, and we could just create our own theater company out of it.
I love that idea. I'm obsessed. Not that I need, if my coach was here, she'd be like, Michelle, you do not need another project. You do not need another project. But
Yes,
maybe
but
I could
IFS the
consult
musical, like sounds like we
or
need
just,
you.
yeah, I mean, I have the voice, you know, I could do
Mhm.
Broadway. Um, so usually the first thing I want to get into two things. One, just a little background on you, and two, to talk actually about creative dysregulation, have you define it and stuff like that. But I think first I will ask you about you, and my very scientific question that I ask everyone is, what's your deal?
I like the facial expression that comes with the question.
Hmm.
Mhm. What is my deal? I should probably get my husband to just come right around the corner and answer that. I'm like,
Oh my God, Ketty, cameo.
he's in a deep workflow.
Okay.
What's my deal? I'm a weird one. Yeah, I've just been on a crazy journey my whole life of self-discovery and had very distinct different chapters. I'm 34 years young right now, and when people actually hear my life story, they're like, I don't understand how you can have so many lives already.
Yeah.
Like you've lived enough lives to be 80. Um, and God, what do I even want to share here? I kind of the biggest threads that I've been following in my life have been what do I want to do for work and how do I want to express myself? And the concept of work never made sense to me. And I was sort of forced into my first job at 15 and a half by my mom, who was like, you absolutely need to work and you need to work now. And I never had time to really think about what does this mean? Because I was a perpetual, I loved being a student. I was such a student. I loved getting great grades. I loved being in all the extracurriculars. And so the idea of work just like didn't fit into my paradigm of reality at 15, 16 years old. And and then the opportunity to go to college, to go to a 4-year college got taken away like right at the last minute. And so I went into kind of like weirdly fell through the cracks of life and was like a straight A student who was like destined for like a full ride probably somewhere, but that ended up waitressing at a 50s style diner, dating a guy 10 years older than me, and going to junior college and just having like
Wow.
no idea what I was doing with my life. And I spent a large part of my 20s wandering, making big life decisions without any quality mentorship or guidance. And so I've learned that mentorship, coaching, and guidance are so essential for people as they're navigating the big existential questions about themselves and life. And I did a lot of cool things. Like I worked at Disney, and then I moved to the Rockies and became a snowboard bum, worked in resorts, hospitality, and then decided I was going to go and finish my undergraduate degree, which I eventually got after 7 colleges. I went to
Wow.
7 different colleges, which was largely determined by like moving around so much, but also changing my mind and changing majors. Eventually got that in international business. Moonlighted as an adult entertainer on the weekends for about 7 years and lived a double life doing
Wow.
that, which then catapulted me into my own spiritual journey when I recognized my psyche was like fractured in 2 different identities as like good girl Kelly Monday through Friday, and then like vixen, sexy um, performer on the weekends, went under the stage name Tori. And then at like 27, that all kind of started crashing down and went into a spiritual inquiry around life and who am I really, and how do I reconcile all of these different parts within myself. Started traveling the world and doing the very quintessential digital nomad thing of like living in spiritual hot spots around the world, mostly Bali, but
Bali. I was gonna
also,
say, I bet Bali, maybe
but
Sedona.
I've traveled there, but I
Okay.
didn't spend much time there. Bali was the big hub. Spent some time in the Oaxaca coast of Mexico with my husband during the pandemic, now husband, as well as Antigua, like Atitlan
Oh yeah.
area, and then just went down what I call the far side of woo, which is I tried every different spiritual modality that I could get my hands on, from plant medicine, meditation to like strange energy healers, all sorts of different things, just in search of finding myself, the real me. And that started all settling and becoming much easier around my early 30s. And so the last couple years has been sinking into the commitment of marriage, um, and really finding that intrinsic empowerment to be a creative person out in the world and define my own career. So, like, fully unplugging from the conditioning around work and like recommitting to it from my own perspectives, and seeing that my life journey and all the twists and turns and ups and downs like is the fuel to my creative spark. And so now I'm really recognizing that I'm here to share. I'm here to share stories. I'm here to share stories of transformation through writing and speaking, um, rooted in my own experience, but in a way that others can relate to and connect with. And I think this book has been a huge milestone for that.
Is it your first book?
It is my first book. Yeah.
Rad. I
Yeah.
love that. I love when the first book is just like, bam. Like I spent 7 years, though it is the culmination of many years of everything you just described. That I feel like the when you said adult entertainment, I was like, oh wow. I feel like at some point in my life, I decided I would do that at some point, and then whatever happened that had me not go that route, had me not go that route. But
Mm.
like it was like a backup plan in my head,
Oh,
almost.
interesting.
Yeah. Like, well, I could always do that, you know?
It's the fallback plan.
Yeah, I think maybe if I hadn't it's if I hadn't found YouTube and just started doing that, being a comedic entertainer, maybe that would have,
Mm.
you know, come about at some point.
Yeah.
Um yeah, I just went a very different path. And then my mom got sick and passed away when I was just about to turn 27
Mm.
when that happened. So that also rerouted me and had me go down all kinds of spiritual routes. And, your story is very different than mine, but also analogous at the same time.
Yeah.
I've
Age
also,
27 seems to be a very
hmm,
pinnacle time for most people. I mean, it's getting near the start of the Saturn return if you follow that in
yep.
astrology. And it's just, yeah, I mean, a lot of celebrities have taken their own lives at 27. Like it's just a big year that usually changes course in some type of major way.
Yeah.
I
And
found
if
that to be
not,
true.
then shortly after,
Uh-huh.
if not then. But yeah, a lot of stuff tends to happen around that time. So to
Well, I
all
find
our
that
20
really,
somethings listening, get ready.
yeah, watch out.
Yeah.
And surround yourself with great people who will be there for
Yes.
you during that time. I mean, I've met a lot of younger people who, I mean, excuse my language, they have their shit together in ways that I did not have until my
Mhm.
early 30s, but they've got it in their early 20s or mid 20s. And I just imagine that course correction around that age won't be as intense or aggressive for them because
Interesting.
they've already found meditation. They're already consciously relating to themselves and others and thinking deeply about who they really are. And so I have
Interesting.
faith that that's not everybody's story.
But it's
Um,
for people, I'm 39, so we're not that
yeah.
far out. And I think it is a really common thing for people in this age range to have that kind of story. So maybe there's correlation with culture and just how much, I mean, I became a coach in 2012. People didn't know what coaching was. I mean,
Mm,
some people did, but the way that people know now, it's totally different.
mm-hmm,
There's less stigma around it and well, and a lot more opinions, but you know, that's just what happens. But yeah, things are very different. I think you're right. And my hope is always that people who are I have a client, I have a few clients in their late 20s and same, I would say they have their shit together in ways that I didn't. I pretended to maybe. But they've got more
mm-hmm,
work under their belt or they started before I did
mm-hmm,
age-wise. And yeah, I would hope they have an easier time. I always say that to the one of them. I'm like, yeah, I hope you reach these milestones before I did.
mm-hmm,
That's the point. It's like how I want my daughter to be more successful than I'll ever be
mm-hmm,
because she had me and I didn't have me. So
mm.
like that's the we shouldn't be like upset when our kids eclipse us. I'm expecting it. I expect to be
Beautiful.
shocked, right?
That's beautiful. And I think it's actually a pretty rare perspective for parents to
Hmm.
hold still, at least when what I've experienced and seen. But I absolutely agree that that is what we need to be doing. And it
Yeah.
reminds me of the book Mastery by Robert Greene, which I
Mm,
devoured very quickly at the beginning of this year. It's still an 18-hour book. It's pretty big. And he talks about he deconstructs the apprenticeship mentor relationship, both in like back in the day when people actually apprenticed for their careers, but also even today, like apprenticing within a creative field or something like that, and how the goal is always for the apprentice to go beyond the master,
hmm.
and that the master needs to also have that humility to know that if they're truly helping that being like with their craft, that they will eclipse them, and that
Yeah.
that's part of it.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
the natural order of things. We
Mm-hmm.
just we should be causing each other to grow differently and better and that's why I share also. That's why I create and I share
Mm-hmm.
my life. Like here, I'll cut myself open. Here's all my guts. Look, learn something, please. Take something from what I'm saying and don't make the same mistake or go ahead and make it, but then realize sooner than I did. And maybe
Uh-huh.
spend like less on therapy than I had to.
There you go.
Eh?
That's the legacy.
You'll follow me. You'll save thousands, hours and dollars. Um, okay. So can you tell us then about creative dysregulation and what it is?
What it is. Yeah. I want to read, I have the book
Yeah, go
title
ahead.
next to me. I'm going to read all the words I put in. So I put creative indifference, mania, overwhelm, insecurity, procrastination, avoidance, impulsiveness, doubt, and then dysregulation.
Mm-hmm.
And the subtitle of the book is Why Your Creativity is Chaotic and What to Do About It. And the phrase popped in my head somewhat randomly while I was living in Bali during the pandemic with my now husband. And I was in the middle of launching my podcast the first time I launched it. It's called Wild on Purpose. It does exist today, but I haven't tended to it in a year.
Got it.
But at the time that I launched it, I launched with one episode alongside a coaching program and a newsletter and kind of like a lot of things that I
Yeah.
was trying to get off the ground all at once. And then I did what I do, which is I launched and then I panicked and I shared it with the world. And then I went and started hiding. And then days went by, weeks went by, months went by when I didn't follow up on anything I said that I was launching or creating, and found myself in like a pit of creative despair and having no idea who I was. And then turning that frustration and anger back towards the projects themselves, being like, well, you're wrong. That was stupid. I should never have done that. The excuse I used to tell myself is, it's not really aligned with me. Like there's something more aligned. So I'd spiritually bypass myself and be like, no, no, I'm just like waiting for better alignment versus sitting in the discomfort of actually learning how to execute on my ideas.
Hmm.
And um, at some point, I decided to start understanding what was going on because this wasn't the first round of something like this. And I was simultaneously watching my husband create his course that I shared earlier, after that tweet and the one person signing up. And I just saw him like every day, just gradually showing up for his creative project. And like slowly, slowly, it came into fruition and was working and people were buying. And it was just this like really regulated relationship with his creative ideas.
Mm.
And I was like, what is that? What is he doing? How is he working on this for months and months and months and like never panicking or never freaking out or never wanting to abandon it? And so I had this mirror of the man I spend my life with, watching him create, which then showed me like all of these patterns that I just normalized within
Yeah.
myself. Oh, this is just creativity. And I was like, oh wait, no, there's another way. And he's a nervous system researcher. So the word dysregulated was coming up a lot around nervous system dysregulation and kind of when we go into these fight or flight patterns. And one day I just popped in my head, oh, I'm creatively dysregulated. Like there's almost a fight or flight response to my creativity. That's how it expresses itself. And that phrase gave me a sense of sort of peace of like, oh, there's a thing here. I can wrap it in a box and wrap my head around it. And I didn't do too much more with it after that. I just kind of was like, cool, here's my experience. Now I'm going to start gradually becoming a little bit more regulated in my own ways. I began working with a cyclical living and embodiment coach who then helped me map my creative actions to my menstrual cycle,
Hmm.
which was profound. And so then I was able to relaunch my podcast and keep it going for about 7 months, which for me was like a really long time
Yeah.
to keep one project going. And it was because I was aligning it with my cycles and my rhythms, which gave me these natural periods of being up and bright and creative, but then also, falling back into rest and a little bit of hibernation, and just doing that cycle over and over again helped to stabilize my creativity more. Wasn't perfectly dialed. I still found myself wanting to avoid my projects, and I still had a lot of doubt and a lot of these other kind of experiences that are encapsulated in creative dysregulation. Um, and it wasn't until writing the book that I fully turned my attention towards the phrase and said, like, what does this mean? And it was because Paul Millard, who was part of the crew that challenged me, he really lit up when I shared the phrase with him because he's constantly hearing from people who are like, "Oh, I want to write a book, but I can't," or I had this thing, but I don't do it," and blah, all these excuses of why they're not creating. And he's like, "This phrase perfectly defines and describes what so many people come to me with." And he's like, "You have to write about it." And I hadn't put a definition to it really before. I hadn't fully dove deep into the topic, but as I was writing the book, I stared at it straight in the face and was like, what are you? What are you, creative dysregulation? And knowing it was resonating with dozens of people. I'm still learning more about it. I'm still learning how it manifests in me. I think it manifests differently in everybody. But
Hmm.
the way I've defined it thus far is it's essentially the inability to create consistently without some type of mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual crisis or collapse along the way. And that can be part of the creative process. And I know humanity historically has pedestalized manic creative people who are like kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say that they were dysregulated in their lives and in their bodies and in their emotional capacities, and that we're now entering into a paradigm of creativity where we can be regulated and the rest of our lives can be in balance to some degree. You know, our creativity doesn't need to derail our mental health and our sanity or the rest of our lives, but we can create in a way that is sustainable, it's grounded, it's enjoyable, and that any of those inner experiences that arise throughout the process, we have the tools and the maturity to work with them as like healing agents along the way.
Mm.
So I very much believe that what we desire to create and any of the blocks that come up are actually just things that want to be healed in our life experience, and that creativity is the
Whoa,
mirror to do so.
this is so cool. Okay, I have so many thoughts. Um, One is that I've been in the question of, does it have to be manic? For the last year or so, I've been writing about it. I even like I've written blog posts while I'm in the middle of a manic state, and I'm just like, hello, I'm in it right now. So from inside, here's what it looks like. And then once it's done, then I'm like, okay, now I'm on the outside. And wow, that was fucked up. Um, here's how it seems now. And I don't want to go back, but I also don't know any other way of showing up. And I just this week, I have been I think one of my dysregulated things I'm still shedding this, just
Mm-hmm.
overcommit myself constantly to the point where the amount of things I'm doing are not humanly possible,
Mm-hmm.
period. And the things I say yes to and want to say yes to, and just discernment. And um I took a huge thing off my plate that for the last 12 years has been the majority of my time spent on it, and I stepped down from it. And I just finished this past weekend. So you're talking to me on day 3
Mm.
of the first time in 12 years having a particular amount of mental space. And I'm also on a Twitter break, which is always good for me. I had to take an entire year off of social media once.
Oh, I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like yours is very intentional. You're like, hey guys, I'm going to take a break. This is going to be good for me. Mine's like, I just avoid it. It's part of my like avoidant attachment expression.
Got it. Yeah, I've never had that. I have the opposite problem where I just go so far in and I stay in, and then I'm like, don't fuck with me. To the point where when I read your definition of creative dysregulation, a part of me wanted to be like, that's complete bullshit. That doesn't exist. Because that part of me is so identified with the mania, and that's who I am. And that's how it is. And my best work comes out of that. And so that's who we
Mm-hmm.
are. And yet I can't live like that. The first piece of fan fiction, talk about mania, the first piece of fan fiction I ever wrote, which was also the first fiction I ever wrote, I got taken by this story.
Mm.
And I'm just writing, and I'm writing in my head when I don't have paper and memorizing the paragraphs. And I'm getting up in the middle of the night and writing it like this. And I couldn't do anything else.
Mm.
Couldn't do anything else. And I wrote 12 chapters in 7 days, 12 chapters of fiction that was like, I don't know, 30,000 words
Wow.
in that
I
in
mean,
this small amount.
that's more of what I did in my book.
Yeah.
You published in 5 days. I'm like, so you published a book in 7 days. There you go, a bigger book.
Well, it ended at 160,000 words, that
Oh,
one.
wow.
And I've done that twice, and I've done a few that are 50,000 and a few that are 20,000, and then a bunch of like little, like 4,000, like just short stories.
Mhm.
But all from this, I get taken by the idea, and then the rest of my life doesn't matter, and nobody gets to see me, and people are concerned.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's really interesting. And I can't fully relate. I think mine came out a little bit differently, but I have found it very interesting that are expressions of creativity. Like I was calling mine creative bipolar at first.
Mm.
And then I was like, am I bipolar?
Yeah.
Because and this while the phrase popped in my head and I was in this inquiry, I was also doing a big gut healing protocol and doing a lot around my mental and emotional well-being separate from creativity. But I was kind of in this like multi-month inquiry of like, I actually might have a mental health condition.
Hmm.
And I was like calling it bipolar just to like give it a name and kind of make myself feel like there's resources and things to do. And then I realized that actually wasn't supportive for me to label it in that way. But again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a health specialist. I'm just someone who wants to be a creative and recognizes there's a lot of complexity in that. But I do see that our creativity and these sort of mental health conditions that people are diagnosed with, like there's similarities there. I
Yeah.
don't think they're one and the same, but they have similar patterns. And so I started using that as my way to smooth it out a little bit more, where I was like, well, I don't really want to express bipolarness in my life. So how do I kind of heal from that?
Hmm.
And then I found that creativity was sort of following suit and vice versa. And really just making it conscious, like just being consciously aware that there's like a manic expression of your creativity is already really helpful because so much of that can be unconscious and just like you said, it takes you.
Yeah.
Um, but just like nervous system dysregulation to regulation is it's just about being aware that like, oh, I'm in a stress response right now. Like, what are the practices that I need to come back to bring myself back to homeostasis? And
Right.
so with creativity, it'd be like, oh, I'm creating really manically right now. What do I need? Like maybe I need a bath.
Yeah. Our hug.
And to give myself some space and just see like I'd be curious, what does it feel like if you're in that phase and there's just all this energy of like I need to create and here's this big story. Like what happens if you just deny it?
I
Do you
wouldn't know.
do you self combust?
Though I will say I had an idea for a Substack piece the other morning, and then it just was the worst timing. Sometimes it's
Mm,
divine timing, and I happen to have a pocket of time where my kid doesn't need me and my dogs aren't barking and everything works out, or I'm at this office. But it was like the worst. All three dogs were barking at me, and my kid was like, "Mommy, well, let's do the Legos now." And I was like, "I just need 15 minutes." She doesn't understand that. She cannot she can't stop herself from talking if I ask her not to talk. It's compulsive. She has to say something. So every time she says something, it would just zap me and I couldn't keep going. And I had to just shut the computer and be like, this piece is not getting written today.
yeah.
And the idea never came back. And that's the thing. I know the
Mm,
idea is never coming back. Or if it does, that's
huh.
happenstance. Because when I get an idea like that and I try to wait until later, it's
Mm,
gone later. It's like I was horny and now I'm not.
mm.
That's how it feels.
Sounds frustrating.
Yes.
Very creatively frustrating.
And I do believe Elizabeth Gilbert's idea that she put forward in Big Magic, that if you deny an idea, it will go find someone else.
That's really funny because yeah, I have a book concept slash it's like a psycho spiritual development framework called Caged Feral Wild that I like I know it needs to be in a book and I've had it with me since 2020. And I like pleaded, I like I like prayed to creativity and I was like, please don't leave me to go find someone else. I just can't do it right now.
Yeah.
But please come back.
I do talk
Be-
to the views also. Yeah.
yeah, because of that book of like, I'd be so angry if that. I'd just be so like sad if that framework
Yeah.
appeared in someone else because it's in the zeitgeist and all of a sudden I don't get to be the mother of it.
Yeah. You just want to be the mom. Yeah. I guess there's something there of just being okay with it, which, yeah, and knowing that there will be other ideas and that this happens all the time. And all I really need to do is keep my vessel open and
Yeah,
clear.
yeah.
And already being off Twitter, I'm like so much less compulsive
Hmm.
instantly and less ideas come. So it feels on some level, it feels like a punishment. It's like, oh, because you went off, now you're not gonna, now you don't get ideas. But also, I think I
Because
just
you
need a
like
different
the,
channel.
does creativity come to you when you're being inspired by what else is
Yes.
happening outside of you?
And interactions
Yeah.
with people. So I have to send it to other people and like create. I have this great group of girlfriends that the last time I went on a long Twitter break, I was off for most of December and some of November, and I was struggling, and they were like, okay, our group chat is your Twitter feed. So anything you would tweet, you just send to us and we will like and we will say retweet. And we'll just be like a mini timeline. And they did, and it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Well,
can't just be, you have to create things. You have to like create other places for outlet.
absolutely. And something I really like about what you shared is the self-awareness of like, you need external inspiration and kind of that feedback loop and conversations with other people. Like creativity is not this thing that exists in a vacuum just inside your head. I think it is that way for some people. And like they're just like the self-inspiration that's just like a wellspring from
Yeah.
within versus those that are like constantly communicating with self and the rest of the world. Um, and then also knowing, yeah, like creativity is this kind of like I love the term syntropy, which is the opposite of entropy. So
Ooh,
it's like this like
what does it mean?
explosion of like kind of like the Big Bang is like the syntropy. It's like all this energy out, but then there's got to be the contraction of like the entropy and kind of
Right.
the black hole of nothingness. And I just don't think creativity can be wrangled. I don't think it can
Yeah.
be even conjured. Like we just need to be available,
Yes.
like you said, with those clean and clear vessels. And then our lives need to have some type of spaciousness to be able to meet it in those moments. But life is full, you know,
Yeah.
3 dogs, a daughter, a business. Like there's not always enough time and space to capture every single creative idea that comes through, which I think I've really had to learn, like as part of the grieving, like the love
Yes.
and the grief of being a creative person is like, I don't get to have it all. I don't get to have every
Ah,
idea. I don't get to see it
yeah.
all come to life. Uh, and I just trust that the ones that are meant to come through me and actually exist, like they will.
Right.
And I also have learned how to like have a project graveyard and how to say, you know, I don't think we're meant to be together right now. So you can go back into the
Yeah.
zeitgeist and go find someone else.
Yes. I had one time I had this group of creatives, the Scheme Squad was our name. And every week we had different assignments. Like one time everybody had to pick someone else's medium, not their
Oh,
medium, and create art in someone else's medium. Things like that. And one time I gave them the assignment to create a list of ideas you've ghosted
mm-hmm.
and then decide, are we having a funeral? Are we resurrecting? But you have to decide. There can't be anything on this paper you don't make a decision about in the next week.
Yeah, just like ghosting relationships. Like at some point you gotta make that more explicit.
Yes. Yeah. Close loops.
Mm-hmm.
I do enjoy a closed loop. Um, just to like not have something be ambiguous, just because something happens. It's similar to the decision to write the book in 5 days. You have just closed off certain other possibilities, like working on it over the next 5 years. That is not a possibility anymore. It's happening in 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
And you like blocked all exits by having people pay for it already, and you said it out loud, and that's your formula that's working for you. And I feel like everybody needs to figure out, what's my formula? Because I know for me, when you said spaciousness in your life, at one point in my life I thought that meant I need to have an entire day dedicated to music and another entire day dedicated to fiction, and for a very short amount of time that worked, and then it didn't, and then it became this vacuous, like, um, really horrible thing where I'd wake up and be like, well, what do I work on first? And how do I spend these hours? And how do I structure my day? Turns out I need to work every single day as a coach, and I need pockets of time in between calls where I'm available,
Hmm.
as we're saying. And so back to back to back to back all day long, not the best for me because I get very creatively constipated because I get ideas when I'm on the phone with people. And then I need to
Mm.
go do something, not just go right to the next thing. but I can't, an open schedule with absolutely nothing on it, not good for me.
Ah, that reminds me of I almost put this in the book and then I couldn't find a way to speak about it well. I might put it in the second version, but there's studies done where children they would put them at a playground where there was then no fence or no boundary perimeter, and then the children actually stayed as close to the playground as possible because they weren't sure where the space to play within was. So they just stayed as close to the center point. And then when they added a fence, like, a ways around the jungle gym, then the kids took up all the space. And they would
Wow.
go away from the jungle gym and they'd go out to the fencing area because they had a clear boundary
Yeah.
to honor. And so when the boundaries of our day and time like are really vague and they don't really exist, I actually don't think it offers enough creative constraints, as my husband and I call it, is like, what are the creative constraints? And
Mhm.
so for me, it was like 5 days to write a book. That's a big constraint, but damn, does it funnel that energy into a super clear and explicit and concise way. And so for you, it feels like those gaps between client calls is like your creative constraints that actually
Yeah.
helps magnify your creativity versus having 18 hours of nothing.
Right. And there's something for me when you said competition earlier, uh, being able, or even when I gave you the cover idea, there was a competition activation there too, because I read other people's comments and everyone was saying, this one's good. No, I don't like that one with the lines. And it was almost like consensus that that one wasn't good from the ones that I read. And I'm like, I'll show you how it's good. It was this, and also Kelly, I don't often have an opinion that's super clear to me alone when I'm by myself that's different from the herd. I tend not to
Mm.
go immediately because I'm so conflict avoidant, so I won't even think of the different opinion unless I'm like talking to my husband and then I go, yeah, you're right. But this was me all by myself reading other people's things and I was like, I have a different opinion than everyone. I'm gonna say it. And it was scary. I was like, what if this is so stupid? What if I'm completely off base and I give this woman a terrible idea
Oh,
and I'm like wrong about the words or like the concept she's trying to put forward? I'm missing it completely. What if all these things came up and I'm like, fuck it, I'm doing it anyway. And I have
yes.
I have 10 minutes before I have to be on the phone, so I better do this really fast. So the constraint also.
Yes. Wow, I love knowing that. And I'll just say, like, we're clearly syncing because even when my designer sent me like the 5 or whatever different options, the one that won was always my favorite. And I
Hmm,
just decided to show all of them because part of me was like, this didn't feel like the safe choice. The one that won with all the lines, I was like, whoa, it's busy. It's got stuff going on. I was like, maybe the woman with the flowers coming out, she's so
yeah.
pretty. And like part of me had to work through like, do I want to play it safe and play nice with this? And then, but my intuitive desire was always the one that chose. So then when you improved it with the different words, it was just like, done.
I felt that. I
Yeah.
felt
And
that.
other people kept voting, and I was just like, cute.
Don't care
We're
about your
done.
vote
We're done.
anymore. I have voted internally now.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes hearing other people's opinions, and I use ChatGPT for this too, by the way. Sometimes
Mm.
hearing other people's opinions just makes it clearer for me what I believe.
Mhm.
So I'll use ChatGPT to show me what I don't want.
What do
And
you
then
mean?
it like I'll ask it to write copy on something and then I'll be like, oh yeah, here's all the reasons why that's horrible. And
Uh-huh.
that actually makes it clearer for me how I want it to sound. Okay, now I know what to write.
Oh, that's cool.
I feel like that's I mean it's cool if I think it's cool sometimes to use AI just to write something innocuous that just doesn't matter in the long
Mhm.
run and could be written anyway.
Mhm.
But mostly I use it as like you're gonna tell me the worst ideas that exist and then I will improve upon them because I need to bounce off someone.
Yeah. Yeah, my chat GBT, Chad, he and I are great sparring partners.
Chad GPT.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm curious, this is like a really personal inquiry. Like I view myself as very multi-creative and multi-passionate, but it's been really hard for me to give myself permission to play in so many mediums. A, because it like gets overwhelming to try to manage so many different skill sets and make time, like you said, to do all of these different things. But also there's like an identity piece of, I think it's so ingrained in our culture to specialize versus being kind of the like the polymath of expression. And so you've already mentioned at least 5 different creative outlets that you are consistently engaging in. And maybe it is a lot, but can you speak more to that identity piece around like allowing yourself to just be all of these different things?
I wonder if I just started doing all of these different things before I ever heard the concept that we should be one thing.
Hmm.
I do think I sidestepped a lot of stigmas by just not knowing about them.
Like while you were growing up?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but I also had models of it. So I did video work with Marie Forleo for years. Like and this is like part of my whole origin story into personal development is I was doing video production and then I ended up doing a documentary about her through a
Mm.
company. I did a documentary on like 5 different people with interesting jobs, and it was like this coach. And this is before she was super well known.
Mm.
And then I tweeted at her a few times and she ended up seeing it. And I'm talking like 2010 this was.
Mm.
Um, so she had, tens of thousands of followers, maybe like 14,000 or something at that point, on
Yeah, wow.
Twitter. And she had self-published her book and, yeah, and she saw my videos and, wanted to make videos too. And so I was around her and she, by the way, she's a fantastic human being. I mean, went to my mother's sick bed, like was at her funeral, and
Wow.
as when I worked for her, if I got into dire straits, not anymore because she has a whole team, but she would just take out her pocketbook and be like, "What do you need?"
Oh,
If I
wow. I
needed
love knowing
anything.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I signed up for B school a
Oh,
long time
nice.
ago. Yeah,
That was my first
I'll
project
still
with
like
her.
pop back into it and see
Check
what
out.
Marie's got to say.
Yeah, I mean, she's always updating and she really just fucking loves all that. Like, she just loves it, man. Like, I don't know. You could form a lot of opinions about her just not really knowing her, but she absolutely loves helping people make more
I think
money.
she's fabulous.
Yeah, she's the best. Um, but I think my exposure to her was really key because she calls herself a multi-passionate entrepreneur and she was a Nike dance athlete and she's very creative and she
Hmm.
loves doing silly shit. That's why she picked me because she
Hmm.
saw my silly fucking music videos on YouTube, like lip dub videos, and went, can we make lip dub videos? Can you help me with that? And the first day I shot with her, she's like, I'll put this Jay-Z song on and I'm just gonna walk around the apartment. And we like did a costume and then I just filmed her around the apartment and cut together a music video. These are
Oh my
all taken
God.
offline at this point because it's all copyright infringement. She has to.
Sure, but so fun.
We did so many of these, Kelly, and we did one in Mexico. I went on her retreats with her and these women also who I would do testimonials and I'd hear about their stories and it was very, very instrumental in making me who I am because I heard all of these incredible stories about people who created money out of nothing and overcame all these odds and or made had $160,000 launch. And I'm like, damn it, I could do that. You're just a person. I see you. You're sitting in front of me. You're just a normal person. I'm a normal person. Me too. Yeah, I want to do that. But we did this one in Mexico that Marie rapped it was that LMFAO Party Rock is in the house tonight, that song.
Yeah.
And Marie rapped the first verse and then I rapped the second one in this like ridiculous outfit. And it was one take because at the very end I jumped backwards into a pool with my clothes on. And we got to show that video at Rich Happy and Hot Live, her event, on this big fucking screen with like thousands of people. I'm like, this was my venture into, oh, maybe I'll be a coach. Maybe I'll do stuff in the personal development world because I was just around her.
Mm.
And we did do one to a Jay-Z song that we showed at hers the next year. And then Jay-Z's cousin was there in attendance and sent it to him.
Wow.
I wept. I wept.
These are incredible stories, Michelle.
Thanks. I don't think I've talked about either of those things on here before. But like that kind of shit happens to you and you're like, yeah, what I'm doing is great. I don't have to like anybody who tells me you should really, like, your content's all over the place. I'm like, yeah, I'm all over the place.
Uh-huh.
What am I gonna do? You
Yeah.
know, I mean, one thing I will say is I recognize I don't have time for the fiction that I've decided that fiction is going to be like my retirement career. I'm going to be
Mm.
an old lady writing horny novels. Let's do that.
Can you also be like sitting on the side of like a pool
Yeah,
with like big glasses on and like
absolutely.
calling the pool boy over to refill
Yes,
your margarita?
I will have a pool boy.
That's just
Yes.
the vision that came to me.
Thank you. I will make that. That will happen one day. But yeah, I'm really clear. I'm good. I'm good at writing fiction. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm completely improvising. I got a lot of readers right away in doing it. It comes very natural to me. But I started getting into videos about story structure and how to develop characters. And I hyper fixated on it for about a month. And then I went, I got to give this up because
Mm.
I really have other things that are more important to me than this right now.
Mhm.
And if I'm going to focus on anything, it's music. So then I tried to do that for a bit, and then I was also like, you know what, I think my biggest creative project is my daughter, and I
Mm.
think that's the focus of my life for now. And
Mm.
at some point I'll make an album, and at some point I'll write books, and I'm not going to worry about when it happens. At this point, I've spent too
Mhm.
many years worrying, when is it going to happen, why hasn't it happened yet, and why do I
Mm.
keep failing at moving this forward. And it's like, just priorities, that's all. Like, it's just, she's
Mhm.
only going to be this age once. Who knows what can come of that too, because she's also a singer and a writer and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. I love that. It's so multifaceted of like taking inventory of your life and just being really honest of like, here's the life stage that I'm in right now. And here's what actually matters to me now. And I love the idea of already looking under the horizon and being like, this is my retirement creative project. Because because for both of us, and I'm sure for so many people listening, like I have no doubts that the muse is going to be with us for our whole life, and
Mhm.
maybe even like it might increase in its intensity as we get more life experience and get to like
Yeah,
understand ourselves more and whatnot and become cleaner vessels. And so it's just like trusting and letting go of like, this is what I can do now. And I know that at the end of my life, I'll look back and be like, damn, that was so exciting. And I did so much.
totally. Yeah, like the roller coaster coaching idea is one I've had forever, and I finally launched it last summer and started going and taking people and having these experiences of intentionally riding a roller coaster
Mm.
with, like, there's this one, the tallest, fastest, maybe not, no, fastest in the US, tallest in the world roller coaster is 20 minutes from my house
Where are you?
in Jersey.
Okay.
It's at Six Flags Great Adventure. And I took two gals from Twitter to the park, and we went on that one. And while we were in line, I said to them, okay, we're all gonna pick something from our lives that we need to let go of, and we're gonna let go of it at the top.
That is so cool.
Right? Like, who does that? Nobody. You just
Nobody
get
does
scared,
that.
you ride the fucking thing, and then you're like, I did it. You
Well,
know?
and like no coach, I've never heard of a coach doing coaching in that type of super embodied experiential way,
I also
you
do breath
know?
work on the coaster. Whole different experience.
I'm sure.
Completely different. Like, it's like while you're going up, and then you breathe in, and you let it out as you're this way, or there's a whole bunch of stuff to
And
it.
even just like having somatic awareness when you're on a roller coaster, because
Yeah.
there's so much weird stuff that happens inside your body and your belly, and
Yes.
feel the fear, feel the terror, and the also the helplessness of like, I can't get off this thing now.
And the surrender available there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing I'm most interested in with the coasters, is the letting go and the literal physical act, and noticing your resistance to fully letting go and putting your arms up. And then when do you put them back down? And then can you put them back up? Can they stay? I rode one. There's a really scary one at Great Adventure that I rode. I put my arms up as we were going up on the first ride, and I was like, I will not put my arms down once this entire ride. They're just staying up here the whole time. Kelly, orgasmic experience. Ridiculous. Wild experience. Like, I was so scared to do it because that particular one just, it freaks me out. It had, because I wrote it when I was younger, and I was really scared then, so it carries some emotional weight.
Oh, interesting. Uh-huh.
I was just blissed the fuck out the whole time, just laughing. It's great when the screaming turns to laughing.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna fly out to Jersey and come ride roller coasters with
Yes,
you.
yes,
We'll
yes,
be in New
yes.
York at the end of May for my birthday, so we'll just pop on over to Jersey.
Guys, this is happening. This is happening. This is Kelly, end of May. Okay, we're gonna
Yeah, if you want to
schedule
come see
it.
some Broadway shows too, I don't know what we're gonna see, but that's just all I want to do for my birthday.
Huzzah!
Huzzah!
Well, this sounds great. Also, I'm having a flashback now because I went with Marie Forleo to Great Adventure. She loves roller coasters.
I can see
And
that.
she brought all these entrepreneurs who I didn't know who they were at the time. And like over the years after, I've been like, oh, I was at a theme park with you. I had no idea who you were that day. Just like with this whole cool ass crew of entrepreneurial people who are like out in the world. But yeah, like that day of going, I thought to myself, that was part of what came that where I got the idea, because I just thought, what a neat idea to bring a bunch of people who are like at their computers all the time, making online courses and doing all this stuff, and let's go do something super physical and scary. And Marie
Yeah.
literally sprinted between roller coasters. She was like, we're going to get on every single one of these today. And like, we're running through the park to get to the next one.
Oh man, I just love that so much. A- and the piece that I love and that I think like a big takeaway is kind of like how I asked you originally, how did you wrap your identity around being all of these different things, and that not even really being a factor or a problem along the way because you were exposed
Yeah.
and surrounded by such incredible other creative people who they just demonstrated like it's okay to be all of these different things and to be supported in that. And I just think that is one of the most like critical factors for any
Yeah.
creative person is really like get around the right people
Yeah.
who really lead you towards the light, help you feel more empowered to be all of your authentic, weird, wild, wacky self. And this kind of like attitude of yes. Like when I think of Marie Forleo, I just think of her as like this, yes, she's yes to life
Yeah.
and yes to all of her parts and components. And yeah, for some of us who have grown up with more like internalized disempowerment, or we weren't able to kind of shine in all of our different facets, it can be really hard
Yeah.
to illuminate that as adults and not live so compartmentalized. And I just think who we surround ourselves with, which is why it was so shocking to me when I fell in love with Twitter, because I've had an aversion to pretty much every other social media platform,
Yeah.
and I just haven't been able to sustain activity there, especially Instagram. And when I got on Twitter, I was like, oh, just a bunch of like smart weirdos who like to create cool things and celebrate each other doing it.
Yeah. It's the
Of course, there's
best.
probably a whole nother version of Twitter for
Oh
other
yeah. I
people,
mean, people hear me
but
talk about it. They're like, what are you talking about? It's, it's a matter of finding the right crew.
yeah,
And I
just like
only
in life,
interact
it's
with,
just a
yes,
microcosm of how we need to orient towards our tribe and our crew in life.
yes.
Yeah.
I did an online singing and music production course. I did two of them. One was singing, one was music production. I guess music production because the teacher, it's studio.com. They do these like live cohorts, but the teacher is someone who's like famous to a degree or like super famous somewhere. And the guy who was my teacher made pop music. Kelly, it was the first time in my life that I had been surrounded by people who love pop music and love to produce it and think it's great. And every other part of my life, it's people who shit on it and think it's
Mm,
terrible and don't understand the art behind it and think it's trite. And here I am all of a sudden like, I was,
my people.
yeah. And so relieved because I've just been shamed for my taste in music my entire life.
Oh man.
So then to meet these people who are like, oh yeah, oh, and I love in this, and they're referencing all these singers that I've loved for years that nobody really knows, and just like, what's happening and where have you been and how come I haven't found this circle of people before? So I'm convinced stuff like my album is just because I haven't met the right creative partner yet and
Hmm.
producer that fills in all my blanks and that our life situations are matched where we can actually work together. And it just happened for my friend Caitlin, who was the last guest on this podcast. Um, I can't remember exactly how old she is, but older than both of us, like 40, nearing 50, and just put out her first album, and it's exquisite. And it's because she met the right producer, and it worked out.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about it, but I'm like, yeah, the puzzle pieces have not aligned yet. Because when I want to do something, it happens, and it's not usually this kind of constipation around it.
Mm.
So yeah, it'll happen.
Hmm. Yeah, to bring it full circle, like this book being in existence and this challenge and how it all came together, I really believe it was because, more specifically, I think because of Paul Millard, who has had a very successful self-published book that he had no idea was going to be as successful as it has been, and
Mhm.
it truly went viral. And having him just sit, he was at our house, so he was just sitting across the table from me, and he was like, "Write this book, like go." And there was just something about his energy and presence. Like my husband could have said that, my best friend could have said that,
Right.
and I would have been like, okay, yeah, cute. But there's like you get the right people in your life, and it could be for 5 minutes. They don't actually have to be along for the whole ride. I had a little WhatsApp group. It was called Kelly's 5-Day Book, and there was just 4 of us in there. So I was like
Nice.
sending updates, and anytime a block would come up, I would just drop it in, and they were offering guidance and advice. But something around our energies coming together helped move through all that constipation and just birth the thing with actually relatively not a lot of pain, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like if it was just me trying to put the thing out, I think it would have been a lot harder.
Yeah, and maybe you
So
wouldn't have
that
made it.
chemistry and that synergy between just the right humans, and I think a lot of that is mystery. That's just a lot of trusting that they're coming and that we'll recognize them when they're in our lives and when they're sitting right next to us.
Right.
And then just being willing to be like, oh, okay, now is the time. Let's go.
Yes, answering the call.
Yeah.
When it rings, you'll
Pick
pick
it
it
up.
up. Yeah. Well, this is the perfect place to close. Where can people find you?
They can find me in several places. They can come hang out with me on Twitter or X, Kelly C. Wilde. My website is kellywildemiller.com. My Substack newsletter and podcast is wildonpurpose.co. And then the book is Creative Dysregulation, which is currently on Amazon. I will get it more widely distributed. And so they can just hit me up on any of those places, and I would love to chat with people. My email is always open. I love hearing from people and just learning who people are and what they're up to in the world.
Great.
So all listeners are invited to connect with me.
What
Send a
should
DM or
why don't we challenge them with something? Challenge my listeners if they've gotten this far. Uh, what should they email you with?
well, it's funny. We didn't even talk about the word bullshit, even though that's the
Oh
name.
yeah, breaking up with
Break
your
up with your
bullshit.
bullshit. I think we implicitly talked about that a
Yes.
lot. Um, So yeah, why don't they email me and let me know how they're breaking up with their creative dysregulation or any of their
Nice.
or their stories around why they're not creative or why they can't do the thing. Like reveal that and
I
I
love
will
that.
celebrate the heck out of you.
Fabulous. And I'm going to put everything you just said will be in the show notes so people could just click. So you have no excuses. Email Kelly, get her book. And Kelly, we're going to ride roller coasters fairly soon. So they'll be hearing about you again.
Yay.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on, Michelle. This was so